everyone. Today we're going to be doing ratios and proportions. And so ratios compare two quantities and proportions show when two ratios are equal. This topic helps us understand real life situations like prices, speed, and even scaling. So by the end of this lesson, you'll know how to set up and solve proportions with confidence. So let's get started. So starting off, we're going to define these two things. So a ratio compares two numbers. A proportion signifies that two ratios are equal. Ratios can be commonly written as A colon B, A divided by or slash B, or A to B. Either way, you see these or write these, they'll be fine and acceptable because they mean the same thing, just written a little differently than the other. And proportions are commonly written as A over B equals C over B, or C over D. So just know that when we are actually solving, the letters will take place of real numbers. These are just placeholders of how we set up the equation. Alright, so how do you solve a ratio proportion? Simple. The easiest way to solve is to use cross multiplication, or you can use unit rates. Cross multiplication is more visual and more step by step, and unit rates are more to the point and straightforward, so less writing. Either way you use, they're both acceptable and a-okay, and you get the same answer using them. So for the first half of the video, I will go over the cross multiplication way, and in the second half of the video, I will go over using the unit rate way. Alright, so our first example, I have x over 4 equals 3 over 8. Now I'm going to do cross multiplication. Another way that cross multiplication is set is the butterfly method. So it's where I look across the equation and go down, if that makes sense. Here, let me show you. So x times 8, as you see, the picture sort of shape forms like butterfly wings, and I'm just going across and down for each one. So x times 8, and I have 4 times 3 because that's what those wings signify, cross multiplication. So when I do that, I have 8x equals 12. Now I am going to want to isolate that x every single time because that's what I'm solving for. So to do that, I'm going to do 8x divided by 8 and 12 divided by 8. When I do that, I'm left with 12 divided by 8 and I got to figure out what that is. So I know 12 divided by 8 equals 1.5. So that means x equals 1.5 because 12 divided by 8 is 1.5. That's my x. Now let's look at example number 2. I have 5 over x equals 2 over 10. I'm going to do some cross multiplication to do that. So I'm going to make my butterfly wings, and that's 5 times 10 and x times 2. So I'm going to write that as 2x equals 50. I'm going to want to isolate that x, and to do that I'm going to do 2x divided by 2 and 50 divided by 2. So when I do 50 divided by 2, I get 25, and that means x equals 25. That's what I solved for. So it's really simple, and it's not as hard as you think. All you're doing is cross multiplying and isolating that x. Those are the only two steps you're focusing on, and that is how we get our answer. Real short, simple, and easy. And if you need more practice, that's a-okay. For me personally, it did take some time to understand that. I learned this way in elementary, and it did take me quite some time because for some reason I didn't understand the butterfly method. And so I would say definitely practice with that if these first two examples weren't clear enough or didn't help. So definitely do some practice. And I believe I have some practice further along in the video, so you could watch and stick to the end. Alright, now example number 3. This one has more words in it. So let me read it. Alea wanted to buy some vinyls. She went to the record store and 3 vinyls costed $9. Alea wanted to buy 6 vinyls. How much would 6 vinyls cost? Now already I see some important information, and it's a lot of words. Now I do want to highlight my important information so I know what I'm looking for, because words can sometimes trip us up in word problems. So I see 3 vinyls cost $9, and I see 6 vinyls, and the question is, how much would 6 vinyls cost? I highlight this information, and it helps me know what I'm looking for. So already, the highlighted section in yellow, I see 3 vinyls costed $9. I want to say that is my given. When you see something like that worded that way, that means that is your given. 3 vinyls cost $9, or X equals this, that's your given, when they already give the numbers to you. Now, the 6 vinyls I see is what is wanted. The how much would 6 vinyls cost is the question. And this information helps me set up my equation. So, 3 over 9 equals 6 over X. And the reason I set it up like that is, one, I want to align my units. I don't have my units written, but I know the 3 vinyls and I know 6 vinyls. Those two numbers are aligned at the top together, so keep that in mind. Always align your units. And I know that the 9 is the cost and the X is the cost, so those are dollars. Now I'm going to apply my cross multiplication. So I'm going to do 3 times X and 9 times 6. When I do that, I get 3X equals 54. Now I'm going to want to isolate that X. To do that, I do 3X divided by 3 and 54 divided by 3. And when I do that, I get X equals 18. So that means 6 vinyls will cost $18. Alright, moving on to our next example. A terrain driver decides to participate in a nature drive. To get the most out of the drive, they decide to drive a lengthy amount. They decide to drive 140 miles in 8 hours. Now I'm going to pause here. 140 miles in 8 hours. That is my given. At the same constant speed, how far will it take to travel in 15 hours? So I've highlighted my important information, and now I'm going to apply that. So I'm going to write my equation, 140 over 8 equals X over 15. Once again, I'm finding X, which is miles. At the top, I have 140, that's miles, equals X miles. So make sure to align those units. And then at the bottom, I have my hours. So I have 8 hours and 15 hours. Now that my units are aligned, I'm going to do the butterfly method. So 140 times 15 and then 8x times x. When I do that, I get 8x equals 2,100. And now I'm going to want to isolate that x. So to do that, I'm going to do 8x divided by 8 and 2,100 divided by 8. So when I do that, I get 262.5. So that means the car will drive 262.5 miles in 15 hours. So the word problems aren't as scary, and I promise you they're just as easy as if we were doing the first two examples. Just with more words, and it's important that you highlight important information and align your units. That's a common mistake with these types of equations, not aligning your math units. So I cannot stress that further. Make sure to align your units, because if you don't, then that messes up your answer and the equation altogether. Alright, so now we're going to start solving with unit rates. So a unit rate is when the second number is 1. So essentially it asks for how much is 1. 1 of something, 1 of an item, 1 of a flat price. And so to find this, you divide the total by the unit. This will make so much more sense once we do a few examples. Alright, so example number 1. Farah was taking a test. The test had 90 questions, and she only has 120 minutes to solve them all. How many minutes can she spend on one question? So I'm going to look for important information. So the test had 90 questions. That's important. And she only has 120 minutes to solve. The question is, how many minutes can she spend on one question? So I'm going to take out the rest of the words and just focus on these numbers I'm given. So I highlight my information, and now I can set up my equation. Now, when I'm solving a unit rate, it's not as visual as the cross multiplication because I'm just dividing two numbers. because I'm essentially finding one of something. And I promise you, both ways you do it, you still get the same answer. It's just one is more visual and have more steps than the other. So 120 divided by 90, because I'm trying to find out how many minutes can she spend on one question. So when I do that, I get 1.33 minutes. So that means Farha can spend 1 minute and 33 seconds per question. And if need to, or when asked, you can always round to the nearest whole number or tenth, but whenever the question asks. So keep that in mind. All right, for example number 2. Vincent needs to buy some bottled oils for his car. Luckily, the auto shop had a deal on oil that day. 6 bottles of oil costed $24. But how much does one bottle of oil cost? To do this, I'm going to find my important information first. So I see that my given is 6 bottles of oil cost $24. The question is asking how much does one bottle of oil cost? So once I highlight my information, I can now set up my equation because I know what I'm looking for now. So I'm going to do 6 divided by 24 because that's my given, and those are the two numbers I'm going to use, and I'm just going to divide those two numbers. And when I do that, I get 4. So that means one bottle of oil cost $4. So some key takeaways is that a unit rate means per one, so you're finding that one of something. To solve ratio proportion, you can use unit rate or cross multiplication. So either way you use, it's A-okay. I cannot stress that enough. It's just whatever you want to solve with and whatever method you think is easier. And that unit rate primary uses division, which we did in our last two examples. We didn't really do multiplication. We just did solely division. So it goes into the steps you want. And that, make sure, I cannot stress this enough, match your units correctly because that is how you solve your problem. And with the units parts, it go more into cross multiplication. And so, yeah. So that's all for today. Now you know how to solve ratios and proportions and how to solve them step by step. And you even learned 2 methods you can do to solve. So remember, a proportion is just 2 equal ratios, and solving them often involves cross multiplication and simplifying. A unit rate just includes division and it's more straightforward. So thanks for watching and keep practicing to get more comfortable with these problems. See you next time. Ari the Math Tutor signing out.